I've been wondering for the longest time what the Abyss Order is even trying to accomplish. Between stealing books, statues, and brainwashing dragons, their actions feel a little bit confused to me. But with the Chasm's release and the return of the elusive Dainsleif, we finally have some insight as to the Abyss Order's greater goals and the type of threat they may pose to the Traveler and Teyvat. So, with the help of my big brain buddy Papingui over on Discord, let's take a look at the Abyss Order, their Curse of Immortality, and what all of this has to do with a partially released book of fairy tales. My name is Ashikai, and this is a deeper look into the Curse of Khaenri'ah. But before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, Opera GX, the web browser built for gaming. I've talked a little bit about Opera GX before, so you probably already know about features like the CPU and RAM limiters for reduced lag, the UI customization, and the Twitch and Discord integration, but there are some other cool features that I have not mentioned yet. Like this neat little option to hop onto WhatsApp and Instagram from the quick menu on the sidebar. There is no need for extra tabs, just tap and chat without having to toggle between screens. You can even see your notifications right on the sidebar in a nice, non-intrusive way. And having all your messaging apps in one place is really helpful when you're juggling multiple conversations all at once. And of course, for all those nocturnal gamers, Opera GX lets you force dark pages, even on sites that don't have this feature normally, so you don't have to worry about your retinas getting blown out by a blinding white screen in the middle of the night. That is a nice quality of life. And there's a ton of awesome free animated wallpapers, a quick import tool so you don't lose all your bookmarks and browsing history when you make the switch, and Opera GX is even compatible with Google Chrome extensions. So if you're switching from Chrome, you can keep those. You can download Opera GX 100% for free from my link in the description box. If you decide to give it a try, let me know what you think of it by including the hashtag InstalledGX down in the comment box below. Thanks again to Opera GX for sponsoring this video, and now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Starting with a disclaimer. Now, this video assumes that you have read the books before Sun and Moon and have completed the Enkanamiya's main quest as well as the Archon Quest in the Chasm. If you haven't at least done these 3 things, then pop this video into your watch later list until you have, or you're probably gonna get spoiled on a bunch of things you don't want to get spoiled on. I don't really think the spoilers are all that big, but everyone's got a different tolerance for it, so hey, fair warning. I will also be discussing a book at length that has not had all of its volumes officially released in the game. In this video, I will only be talking about the first volume which is released, plus the short summaries of the remaining volumes which are also fair game. Please do not disclose the actual contents of the unreleased volumes of this book in the comments unless you're watching this video post their official release, in which case they're not actually unreleased volumes anymore, are they? So yeah, this is a theory video after all. And that said, I do try to still be as accurate as I possibly can, so all of my sources can be found and linked in the description box, while post-release corrections and video notes will be put in a pinned comment below, so please make sure to check those out if you're interested in looking at some further reading, additional information that I may have missed, or things that the community wanted to add post-video release. There's usually some really cool stuff in there. Okay, that's 3 minutes of your life you'll never get back. Let's move on to the actual theory part, shall we? At first glance, the Abyss Order feels very, one note. Evil-sounding voices, monstrous bodies, association with dark and sinister magic, monster recruitment and summoning, there's theft, threats to overthrow the Heavenly Order, and, well, they're just not very original. I could honestly be describing almost any enemy faction from any fantasy game at this point. It's not a good sign. And of course, to make things worse, the Abyss Order seems to lack focus in terms of what they actually want to accomplish. On the surface, at least. I mean, look at this list. So far, they've tried to create a cyborg god to fight Celestia for them. They've brainwashed a dragon, stole a statue of the Seven, and then hung it upside down for some reason that we still don't know about. They stole a bunch of library books. They like to hold dance parties with the Hilichurls, although I suppose these are more like Hilichurl recruitment ceremonies, but still dance parties. And they've also promised to restore the Traveler's mysterious homeland for unknown reasons, and they've tried to prove that Celestia is made up of aliens. So it's a pretty mixed bag. It makes for a pretty confusing list, and it hardly paints them as anything more than slightly more competent but really weirdly dressed treasure hoarders. But if you take a closer look, we can start to see a pattern forming, and their actions kinda start to make sense. All the way back in version 1.4, we learned from the Abyss Twin that the Abyss Order is entirely made up of the former survivors of Khaenri'ah, who had been cursed with immortality, and this includes Dainsleif. This revelation mostly pointed to one primary objective or motive for the Abyss Order: to get revenge on the ones that destroyed their home and cursed them into these monstrous forms. It's simple enough, right? But in the trailer for that same quest, the We Will Be Reunited trailer, an Abyss Mage mentions the Homeland, something that isn't mentioned in the quest itself. And the Abyss Mage kinda implies that it's the Abyss Twins' homeland, saying, "When your homeland returns to this world." And this statement has confused theorists for a long time. It implied that the homeland of the twins had been to Teyvat once before and must not have been destroyed at all, even though if you read their character lines and description text thingies, it says quite clearly that their homeland was destroyed. So that part's a little bit weird. It also seemed like the Abyss Order was bringing the homeland of the twins back in exchange for something that the Abyss Twin had or could do for them, which is also kinda odd. But in the Chasm, instead of your homeland, it is called the homeland, which has very different connotations. First off, the Abyss Twin mentions the homeland as if it and Khaenri'ah are the same thing, or at least that they're in the same place. Kind of like Khaenri'ah was built over the remains of the twins' homeland. A new city, a new civilization, but the exact same location. Now, this isn't stated outright, but it's heavily implied. The Abyss Twin claims that hilichurls, which are former citizens of Khaenri'ah in this case, are a required catalyst in restoring the homeland. Now, if the homeland and Khaenri'ah are not the same place or in the same location, then the need for uncursed hilichurls from Khaenri'ah makes little to no sense. This interaction with the Abyss Twin paints a very clear picture of what the Abyss Order is actually trying to accomplish. The Abyss Order wants the removal of their curse and the restoration of Khaenri'ah, which might actually be what the Loom of Fate operation is. By undoing an event that was already fated to happen and actually did happen, and this event being the destruction of the homeland, aka Khaenri'ah, they would be effectively denying fate, and technically reweaving it, hence Loom of Fate operation, right? Because like, if you were to take an event that was fated to happen, and then it actually happened, and then you're like, no, I don't want that to happen, even though it already happened, and I'm gonna like go back in time and undo it, or at least like make it so that the event never happened, even if I don't technically go back in time, then you're like breaking fate. It's like a weird paradox, but it's not really like a time travel paradox, it's like a fate paradox, and I don't know how to explain this, but you kind of get the idea, right? Anyway, the twin seems to believe that by using this magic fountain water pool thing, they can reverse the curse on at least a few hilichurls who were once Khaenri'ahn citizens and then use them to begin restoring the homeland. We'll talk more about why, how, and all that kind of stuff in a minute, but this kind of does explain why the Abyss Mages are going around recruiting hilichurls with their funky little dance parties. The Abyss Order is also creating god-powered war machines and gathering intelligence on Celestia by stealing supposedly important books. And all of these play a role in their ultimate goal of restoring the homeland and destroying the people who destroyed them. But apart from the whole how the hilichurls are actually supposed to be used to restore the homeland thing, there's one other thing that really gets to me. And that's which books the Abyss Order has actually tried to obtain, because one of them makes sense and one of them doesn't. If you didn't know or you don't remember, these two books are Before Sun and Moon, which we can get in Enkanomiya, and The Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies, which is a library book from Mondstadt. Now, Before Sun and Moon makes at least a little bit of sense, because it was a record of Teyvat's most ancient history and supposed creation. Given that the book supposedly contains info on the Abyss Order's greatest enemy, this is a perfectly sensible book to target. I mean, the information must be important if its contents got Orobashi killed, right? But The Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies book is a fairy tale. What possible secret could that book even hold? It's not a restricted book, or rather series of books. I mean, Lisa lends out copies all the time and no one's gotten smited for reading it yet. It's like a children's book, right? So me and my buddy Papingui got to chatting about this little conundrum and came to the realization that the book probably doesn't contain information on Celestia like Before Sun and Moon does. But it might contain information on another equally important topic: the Abyss Order's curse and a possible way to undo it. Allow me to explain. For those of you who don't read in-game books, and I don't blame you if you don't, let's talk a little bit about the Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies. This book was one that we retrieved from an Abyss Mage during Lisa's story quest because he stole it. That Abyss Mage claimed the book contained a great secret and expressed surprise that we wanted to know about whatever this secret was. From just the short summaries and the first volume alone, it really does look like just a normal fairy tale. Until you realize which fairy tale this book is actually supposed to be referencing. The title, The Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies, actually translates literally from Chinese into Snow White and the Six Dwarves, a title that is consistent across basically every language except for English, because why not? Based on this new title alone, we can make a few inferences about the story's contents without even reading it. First, the characters of the story should be a princess, a prince, the dwarves, and an evil queen, or in this case, it's called a Night Mother. Second, something's gonna get eaten that is not supposed to get eaten, like the poison apple from the fairy tale. And third, somebody's gonna get cursed. Or maybe multiple people, who knows? So let me go out on a little bit of a limb here. Based on the short summaries, the dwarves in this case are being portrayed as villains separate from the evil queen, but no less malicious. This is a little bit different from the original fairy tale in which the dwarves were actually, helpful and allied with the princess. Although it does appear that these dwarves did play that role for the Pale Princess, at least for a time. The short summaries also suggest that the dwarves are greedy and want to seize something that belongs to the prince or princess. If I had to guess, this might be some kind of hidden knowledge or something that they knew. I suppose it could be a great treasure, but I kind of doubt it because there really isn't a special treasure in Snow White. But what Snow White does have is a poison apple that curses her, and poison apples are really interesting because an apple is kind of considered a universal symbol of forbidden knowledge, just like the apple that Eve ate after being tempted by a snake in the Garden of Eden, right? Genshin just so happens to put a lot of emphasis on forbidden knowledge as a general theme. The stories told in the Tiara artifact sets are a perfect example of this. So, what if the dwarves of this story are actually the Khaenri'ahns? Remember that Khaenri'ah was an underground civilization, and stereotypically, dwarves were denizens of the underworld. Now, the Khaenri'ahns aren't exactly fond of gods, so it would stand to reason that they might actually have some malicious intentions towards them. Kind of. So what if the princess and the prince in this case are actually likened to types of gods? Gods have knowledge that humans don't have, and perhaps the dwarves or the Khaenri'ahns in this case wanted that knowledge. They wanted that poisonous apple, the forbidden fruit. Maybe they decided to steal it from them and consume it themselves, only to be cursed as a result. In other words, this story, The Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies, might actually be a retelling of the events leading up to the Cataclysm. Khaenri'ah seizing forbidden knowledge and then getting their butts cursed by the gods as punishment. Well, by the heavenly principles, which we're assuming are a type of god, right? And this is why I suggested that the Pale Princess books contained information equally important to that of Before Sun and Moon. It's not information on the enemy, it's information on the Khaenri'ahns' affliction, and maybe even a method to reverse it, since, in her story, Snow White did eventually break her own curse. Or, well, I guess technically a prince did it for her, but whatever. Heck, part of me wonders if the fountain that the Abyss Lector was trying to use to purge the curse was something that they discovered thanks to the Pale Princess books. How else would they know to look in the depths of the chasm? How would they know where to find it? How would they know what they're looking for if they didn't have something to go on? Now, I could say a whole lot more on this, and some really compelling stuff at that, but like I said in the disclaimer, all but one of these volumes are still in lore jail, so this is as far as I can extrapolate for now. But as to the nature of the curse itself, Snow White fell into a deep sleep, which we can see did not actually happen to the Abyss Order. Although, the idea of falling into a deep sleep does kind of make you wonder about this line from the Travail trailer when talking about the Khaenri'ahn chapter.
In the perpetual meantime of a sheltered eternity, most are content to live and not to dream. But in the hidden corners where the god's gaze does not fall, there are those who dream of dreaming.
All this talk about dreams and Snow White falling into an eternal sleep kind of makes you wonder. But anyway, Dainsleif does manage to give us some insight as to the nature of the curse. He tells us that this curse is placed upon them by a god and that it takes effect at a higher level of reality, which I think just means it screws with the fundamental laws of the universe. He claims it's a curse of immortality and that they are denied death or that they are unable to die in the normal way, so they are just forced to wander the world forever until erosion finally wears away at them until there's nothing left. I took this to mean that the people who are cursed are basically unable to return to the natural cycle of life and death in Teyvat, which involves returning to the ley lines. We learned that from both Hu Tao and Yae Miko during both of their respective story quests. Since the memories of everything that ever was and ever has been and maybe even ever will be exists within the ley lines, being denied access to them effectively means that you don't exist as far as the history of the world is concerned. You're not permitted to die, you're not permitted to be remembered, your memories are not permitted to enter the official record of the world. So the cursed ones' minds, their bodies, their identity, their memories, all of it just gets eroded until there's absolutely nothing left. Like they never truly existed at all. And this process occurs at different rates, it seems. According to Dainsleif, being in possession of a certain thing appears to be able to either slow or reduce the effects of this curse to varying degrees. Whatever this thing is, Dainsleif apparently has a lot of it, because he's still pretty human-looking compared to the rest of his former associates. But still, the idea that one's memories can be lost forever and completely forgotten, well, that reminds me of something that might help explain why the Abyss Twin believes that a few uncursed literals can restore the Homeland. In the chasm, Dane and Halfdan have this odd conversation, which made me think, why is Dane's existence proof that Khaenri'ah hasn't fallen yet? And then it hit me. Because Dane still remembers Khaenri'ah. His memories are still intact. Consider this. What if the Abyss Order was trying to lift the curse from a few Hilichurls because they were going to use their memories as a sort of backup data for reconstructing their homeland? If we assume that the Abyss Order is only able to remember bits and pieces of things due to erosion, then this idea starts to make sense. Even if they do remember things, they may not remember every aspect of it. They need more memories. Similarly, the Abyss Twin might be immune to the effects of the curse, but they spent most of their time in Khaenri'ah actually traveling around Teyvat with Dainsleif, so they probably don't remember a whole lot of Khaenri'ah to begin with, or at least not enough to reconstruct it, and because there's only two of the twins left and no one else really from their civilization that we know of, it's quite possible that it's impossible for them to restore their homeland from their memories because they don't remember it all that well to begin with. There's just not enough data to work with, so restoring Khaenri'ah is their best bet, as close as they can get to restoring their homeland, right? And the longer they wait, the harder this task becomes, because being cursed, denied access to the ley lines, the very thing that holds all of the memories and all of the data of all of the things in Teyvat, means that the curse is effectively deleting Khaenri'ah and its people from the history books. They were never human. They never existed. They were never a city. They're just another faceless, troublemaking hilichurl. And even though Dainsleif seems to have no interest in actually truly reviving the Homeland, it doesn't make this line of his from Travail any less sad when you realize the new implications of what losing his memories really means.
My memory has all but faded completely, but I will always remember how much she too loved these flowers.
But that said, all of this means that no one in the Abyss Order or Dainsleif knows that Kaya exists. Think about it. Kaya was left as a child at the Dawn Winery by his father. They're both from Khaenri'ah. His father called Kaya their last hope, leading most of us to believe that he was specifically selected for a reason. The most popular reason usually involves whatever may or may not be under his eye patch. But what's special about Kaya might not have anything to do with his eye, or some weird magic gift, or weird experiment, or anything like that, or being a child spy even. But the fact that he may contain completely uncorrupted memories of Khaenri'ah. He might be a literal backup from which an entire country could be restored. And this might be a little out there, but you remember how I suggested that the dwarves from the Pale Princess books might actually be referencing the Khaenri'ahns? Well, Kaya's last name, Alberic, is actually the name of a dwarf from Norse mythology. His family line may have had a hand in the events that transpired 500 years ago. But being able to remain completely uncorrupted while compared to the rest of the Khaenri'ahns implies that Kaya has a whole lot of this mysterious special it thing that Dainsleif mentioned. Kaya's even able to age normally, which is not normal because otherwise Dainsleif would be like a really old, withered old man with white hair and a whole buttload of wrinkles kind of wheezing at us as he runs through the chasm and does his backflips like a very weird version of Gandalf. We know that Kaya grew up alongside Diluc, right? They met as children. And now Kaya is not a child, which means that he aged correctly at the same rate as Diluc did. So whatever he has that's preventing him from being corrupted, he either has a lot of it or he was never cursed to begin with, which has its own implications that I don't really want to go into, but I digress. For now, I would like to propose that this mysterious it thing is blood. Maybe noble or holy blood. And as uncomfortable as some of the implications of some sort of noble or holy blood being the mysterious it factor and protection against, corrupted whatevers might be, let's set that aside for now and I'm just gonna give you my reasoning for it. To start, Kaya's first constellation is called Excellent Blood in English, while in other languages, it's translated to Excellent Lineage or Superior Bloodline. This, coupled with him being called Khaenri'ah's last hope, and the fact that he's the only sword or claymore-wielding Knight of Favonius to use ceremonial blade work over Favonius blade work for his normal attacks, is what gives rise to the popular theory that Kaya must be a Prince of Khaenri'ah. In other words, he may have royal blood. Really pure royal blood. Now, generally, ruling classes and monarchies are pretty intermarried, especially in the knights level, that was considered a pretty noble thing, right? So it's not too difficult to believe that most nobles of Khaenri'ah, including some of the knights, may have also possessed some royal blood. Or maybe it's not even blood, but something else that could get inherited that might be located in the blood, or maybe just something that could be granted via transfusion. Like Durin, for example, was said to contain dark alien blood, just as all other abyssal monsters Gold created were. We know that his blood has this crazy power to transform or mutate other life forms as illustrated by the Regisvines and Crazy Whopper flowers from both of Albedo's Dragonspine events. Oh, and also the Frostbearing Tree, which is apparently full of his blood and is now sentient and also wants revenge. That's a whole nother video. but I'm just making a point here. So if the magic it thing isn't blood, we could assume that whatever this blood-like substance is or was could have been harvested and administered to certain Khaenri'ahns, granting them special abilities and unexpected resistances. We've already seen god juice being injected into people a la Collet, so why not corrosive dragon blood, huh? I mean, the Khaenri'ahns are notorious for having this magical, alchemical process known as Chemia, so why couldn't they use Chemia to create some sort of substance that would give, I don't know, the people of Khaenri'ah vision-like capabilities? Yeah, okay, that might be a little bit of a stretch, but point still stands. We've seen evidence that this is possible. It's a possibility. Speculation aside, it's not the first time MiHoYo has relied on special blood to pull off some crazy metaphysical stunt. In Honkai Impact 3rd, there's another instance of holy blood as seen being used by Cecilia Scarrick, one of the rightful wielders of the divine key known as the Abyss Flower, which, by the way, is decorated with the Cecilia flower found in Genshin and has a design that is very similar to the Black Serpent Knight Lancers, who were royal guards of Khaenri'ah. I feel like that reference is deliberate. Also, one of these Black Serpent Knights, Roneth, says this to us when we fight him. "Who art thou to stop us? We shall cleanse the tainted thing from the skies with sacred blood." So I'm not ruling out the possibility of Dainsleif's mysterious it factor being blood. It seems kinda likely to me. Okay, step back, let's recap. As the evidence currently stands, it seems like the Abyss Order is trying to restore their homeland of Khaenri'ah, and the Traveler's twin is assisting them in doing so. To do this, they are focusing on breaking the curse on the average citizens, who are now Hilichurls, who can then provide memories and data from which Khaenri'ah can be reconstructed, supposedly. Dainsleif seems to believe that this is a terrible idea and also very unnecessary, but we don't know why he thinks this. And then we have Kaya, who has successfully kept a low profile for at least 10 years, and no one knows who he is or was or where he's from, but he's still somehow connected to Khaenri'ah, and he's still Khaenri'ah's last hope because he either has a pure noble lineage that's protecting him, or he's not cursed at all, or he has a completely uncorrupted memory, or all of the above. We don't really know. Now, as for the implications of all these claims, well, it's messy and conditional. If we are correct in assuming that Khaenri'ah and the twins' homeland are related, then the twins have a much higher stake in the events that take place here. They are no longer objective third parties or outsiders. When the Abyss twins said, "You will learn the truth of this world just as I did," they may have been referring to how the world that they once knew had been twisted beyond recognition by powers that should not be here, aka the Heavenly Principles. It would also explain why the Abyss Twin is so keen to take down the Heavenly Principles. As far as they're concerned, they're trying to reclaim something that was rightfully theirs, their home. The one thing the twins have been longing for thousands of years. But unlike the Abyss Twin, the Traveler is having a very different experience in Teyvat. The Traveler is meeting the people of Teyvat and connecting to them on a personal level. They're getting invested in what happens to each of them individually. There may, in fact, come a time when the Traveler decides that the world should belong to the people they've met here, rather than try to retake it for themselves. Which means that even if both twins share a goal of destroying the Heavenly Principles in the end, they may end up doing so for very different reasons that may pit them against one another. Dainsleif may have even reached a similar conclusion, although his perspective on everything appears far more bitter and, negative. And I think that just about covers it. Well, there is more, but you'll have to wait for that in part 2. And don't you roll your eyes at me because you know what happened the last time I said that. The next video will be referencing parts of this one, so it's not like a direct sequel. We'll be talking about the Chasm Nail, the Miasmic Mud, and a third very secret thing that I want to surprise you all with, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I just want to say thank you all for watching this video. I really, really appreciate every single one of you. You guys make the video creation process totally worthwhile. Now, I'll be back in part 2, so until then, stay cool, dry, and fungus-free as you continue to explore the chasm. I'll catch you all later. Bye.